Hey everyone! And the question we're here to ask is how could we use UX to innovate? Welcome to Invincible Innovation Live. I'm Mazor Kario, innovation and value creation expert, and I'll be your host. And today with me, I have Mirjam Wouters. Hey Mirjam, great to see you.
Hi, Adi. Nice to see you again. How are you?
I'm good. Mirjam is the manager of UX InnovationLab at Phillips Research. Right. And I'm so happy to see you here. I've met Miriam a few times when I came to Amsterdam, and we were in the same events and summits, and we talked, and we met in Austria too. So I know it's going to be very inspiring and interesting for sure. We are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and you're much invited to join the discussion and ask questions, so we can start. So tell us about your work in the UX Innovation Lab.
Yes. Well, actually, you can see the lab behind me. I'm quite proud. I'm going to turn my camera a little bit.
Wow.
So this is the space where we have to move my head. So yeah, you see just a glimpse. I could
It looks good.
love to walk you around here, but that's a little bit difficult in this type of setting. But we do that. So what we have done here is we have built a space. Test labs are all over Philips. So we have our mechanical test labs. We have even fall test labs for elderly people. But this is a user experience lab. So this is built to compose. First of all, we're builders, we're creators. We're in the center of the research and design community here in Eindhoven in the Netherlands. So if we have built it, then also we can invite our stakeholders or users or other types of visitors to walk through the journey. And I wish I had some imagery here, but I'll do it verbally because so what we have built here is we work with a care continuum. And so what you see is that people start with healthy living. So this is what they do in their homes. They will try to stay fit, try to get enough sleep, try to be healthy parents, raise their children well, and also to age healthy. But if something occurs, and what we see in the current day and age as well, is that people rarely have one disease, but it's often a stack of diabetes with a heart condition, and especially those type of comorbidities make people also very vulnerable for COVID, for example.
Right.
So there's the prevention phase. So if you have one condition, then you want to stay healthy. That's another phase that we identify. This will often still happen from the home. But then if an event occurs, there's usually two routes, and one is the chronicle type of setting. So you first go to your general practitioner and you get diagnosed and you get referred to the hospital. Or you have a heart attack or an accident or whatever have you, and you are brought in by an ambulance to an emergency setting of of a hospital.
Yeah.
So all these settings we have built in our lab.
Wow. It sounds like lots of work. So one is very different from the other. The one is your home and your private settings and what you do in your daily life. And you're trying to stay healthy as you can. And the other one is totally a emergency room or some kind of a clinic, which is outside.
Yes.
It's very different.
Yes, so we are, and you can see it's quite a clean space. I'm just going to tilt my camera a bit more. So the space is quite clean because I need to get rid of my hat.
Wow, looks very good. Big one, big space.
Yeah. So because we are in the process of the digital, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. But we are in such a digital transformation. So in the lab itself, we leave out as many details as possible. We want to create a context that is relevant and that's representative. And then we just want to bring in the assets or whatever is required. And for example, one of the programs that are running here are about equipment that gets lost often in in hospitals. So we have developed a tracking device system in which you can not only track the beds and the patients in the beds, but also equipment, because those in emergency settings, that can be a matter of life and death if equipment is at the place where it should be. And in
Yeah.
daily practice, we know it's not always there.
Yeah, I
So,
totally see. So how do you see, we're in the middle of the COVID crisis, how do you see your work changed in the past few months during this crisis?
well, so for us as a lab, we used to host a lot of visits. We're running user tests here, and this all became more difficult. And the visits, people are not allowed to travel. So first we saw the first lockdown, we had no visitors whatsoever. So we realized that we had to go digital. So we built a virtual lab. Now there's lots of tools out there to do that, so that wasn't the rocket science. But for us, the rocket science was to show what the so what we show is confidential. So people that come to the lab, if we show our innovation, which is not user and not IP protected yet, or it's still in the making, there's you don't want your competitors to know, etc.
Sure.
So we either there needs to be a trust base, so people that we're partnering with, or people have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. If you go digital, obviously it's hard to control. So you once you broadcast something, you can't control what your audience is doing, and they can record it, etc., etc. So we had to look into ways of how to solve those issues, and so we kind of made a kind of a selection matrix. That was the first thing that we did, to see how can we how can we kind of classify, how can we cluster, how can we also make like a general presentation that gives an impression but does not give away all our secrets, so to speak.
Right.
But on the other hand, we also wanted to have a look at to see if in a more intimate setting we could we could tackle it differently. So we also looked at use of VR, use of AR, creating kind of almost like game rooms where you can have multiple players in, and then engage in co-creation sessions. So that's all in flux, and it's never as much fun as doing it face to face and in reality, but it is working. And even though the creativity boosts that you get, we're still working on that. But like the attention span is shorter.
Sure.
You can't have a full day workshop, for example. And that's very
like
difficult.
half a day is like enough for people to be in front of a screen and focus in one thing. I think like a few hours and that's it. They lose it afterwards, from my experience. And I know you had labs within the hospitals even. And I guess that right now you don't have these, or you have it in very low capacity, or...
Yeah, that's true. And we had to stay out of the hospitals as much as possible, which is difficult for a healthcare company. But it needed to be done. So also there, the digital connectivity was made. But that also showed us the impact of COVID, because we have been running a program on connected care for years, and suddenly that's taken an enormous boost. And so new platforms were developed. In the Netherlands, we saw a situation where hospitals, there were peaks. First, it was in the south of the Netherlands, where I live. So the patients needed to be distributed to other hospitals, and that was quite difficult. So with the digital patient records, and with building a portal and a dashboard, that was also facilitated better.
Yeah. I know that in general, many industries, they go back to their core, because currently there is so many uncertainties in the domain that we are sure that there is innovation and it's growing and really doing the best innovation right now and putting money on it is medical and healthcare. It's like for sure there. and it really makes sense because this is a health crisis. So it's like everything is focused there. And do you feel that you're doing something which is more important currently, or for you it's the same? You're always doing something which is valuable.
Well, that's an interesting question, and it kind of triggers a thought with me, because we have always had a sustainability strong brand promise, and so we look to improve the lives of billions of people, and but what we are increasingly realizing is that health is also very much in relation with the health of our planet. So our sustainability programs have also had an enormous boost because of I cannot say because of COVID, because I wouldn't know if that was true or not. But we see a renewed interest also. People are starting to also look at their life a little bit different. And we also see what happened to nature when we were traveling less, when there were less boats on the rivers. We saw at the coast of the Netherlands an increase on dolphins in the sea. So how fantastic is that? So, but Phillips is really stepping up the game in the sustainability promises as well. It's not my expertise, I have to say, because I'm really happy and I'm really proud to be working for a company who does that. But don't over ask me there, because I don't know.
I didn't know that they do it, but it sounds like a good direction in general to do something which is good for the health of people and for the planet. And another thing that comes up to my mind about health is the importance of mental health during this crisis, because people are close at home. Some of them are unemployed, and the challenge there is very big. And I guess that initiation and projects in this direction will grow further right now, as I see it.
Yes, and that's also what you feel and experience on a personal level. That you feel you feel rewarded, and you feel the importance of working on these types of projects.
Right. Yeah, I believe that once you really believe that there is a good meaning of what you're doing, it gives you so much more value to what your career is and your work life, because most of our the time that we are awake, we're at work most of the time. Mm-hmm. So we want to feel that there is a big value. So what do you think are the skills and capabilities that is needed in order to innovate and for change makers?
Well, I think it's the multi versatility is very important. Team playing is crucial, and to be a good team player, you have to trust each other. So you need to have that's if you are working with a team of innovators, then there needs to be the trust. That's the first thing that needs to be established, you have to kind of connect the dots. That's what I feel we do here in the lab a lot, because we have a vast amount of clinical experts, of all types of scientists working on our healthcare propositions, and they're the experts. Like they really go in depth. But we operate on a quadruple aim, and that's a better patient experience, better staff experience, better clinical outcomes, and better revenue model. You need to be able to oversee that all, and nobody can do that. You're never a financial specialist as well as a creative thinker, as well as so you need to there's projects here. There's 100 people working on it, but bringing all these expertise together, that is for me the core of good innovation.
Yeah, I agree that the ability to collaborate and co-create is so important, because good ideas, you could have a good idea, but to really understand what's the meaning, what could be done, what's the high-level view of it, you need people from different dimensions and different expertise and knowledge. And in general, I think that UX and design, which is a field that I come from, is something, the ability to understand people and what they need, and the high-level view of what the project is, what the process should be, what the experience is, and it's less to the details. I think that the technical people, the engineers, the scientists, they go very, very deep. Something that it's not our profession. They're really experts in that. And we help them to see it a bit like from the upper level of what could be or what should be or what it is actually, help them in with that as I see it.
Yes, I fully agree there.
So what is needed for corporates, because you come from a big corporates, to innovate better?
Yeah, it's kind of a sum of all those aspects. It's the teaming up, to break down the silos. Large corporations often have silos of their own, and so you have to be very aware what the benefits is. But it could be something as simple as setting, targets for your bonus. If that's to sell as many products as possible, for a sales organization, that's not stimulating them to collaborate together.
Right.
And so, and I think in the core of innovation where we are, corporations need to do that, but they need to look at alternative programs. And so, for example, one of the things that I've been doing a lot in the past year is to organize internal hackathons. And that was always mandatory to create multidisciplinary teams. So there would be a designer, a clinical specialist, a technical expert, if possible, fully engaged financial expert as well. In 2 days we wanted them to you have to realize how far you can go in 2 days, but to at least iterate a few loops on a first ID, and also to run that by, so to do some type of user test in these 2 days to come up with a kind of we call it from ID to concept. And so then you would have a concept, and at least then that's looked at.
Sure.
And then you take it further. But organizing these type of hackathons, they're also a lot of fun. And I think if people, so there's the rewarding aspect of it, which is actually almost easy if you work in healthcare, because it's very rewarding. You're working on improvement of health and improving lives of people. But on the other hand, if you can have fun, if you can let your hair down, if you can just work on crazy ideas, something out of the box, something completely different. If large corporations, if they reward that, if they bring this kind of, that's why these hackathons, we call them creative playgrounds. And that is because they are so inspiring, stimulating. People work, like 24/7 for 2 days. They're exhausted afterwards, but it's still a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, I think that creativity is connected to something which is more spontaneous, and the way it's like open-mindedness and not something very specific and details, because you need to connect to thinking differently. And could you tell us about when you do these hackathons? Sometimes they have great ideas. How do they grow it from there? Let's say that like 20% of what you created could be a very good prospect from now on. So how do you take it from there to execution?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question, because the validation of ID and the assessment of IDs is a difficult one. We don't just rely on our gut feeling. So there's of course a whole array of checks that you can do. But what we also often see is that sometimes you can be too early with your innovations. So then you have a great idea, but it's not, the market is not ready for it. And then in your internal innovation culture, you can have to say, oh, that's an old idea, like we've done that already in the past. So we're also creating a database of all the concepts that are developed in these hackathons. And so that they can be also revalued, and the whole there's your you need to build a business case. That's I think very important.
Sure.
So it's just kind of the whole so it's a phased process.
And these teams that created the idea, they go from there to planning, to the business case, to the validation, or afterwards it goes to some other, I don't know, someone else is in charge of that. It's the same team going further.
Yeah, well, that's a bit of both. It's a bit of it could be, because sometimes what you see is that if they carry out their ID, it's your baby. It's like if this was like if invented by me, that's very strong. So people are very motivated. They will go the extra mile. They'll not say like, well, like, oh, this user test didn't come back very positive. Let's just kill it off. But they will go and look at the type of interviews that were there. So there's always more depth to it. So the motivation and the drive and the passion, that's something, if you can keep that alive, that's fantastic. But yeah, it's not always possible, because if somebody is, we've had issues with that. So somebody was on a heavy duty oncology development track, and one of the creative playgrounds. Then his manager would not be very happy if we said, oh yeah, but now he's going to do this. Sorry.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of also be aware of the differences there.
Yeah, I think that you need to see it as a corporate, as a total plan. So this is only the first step of the total plan. Afterwards, you really need to think how you get these people to do it afterwards, and how much time do they invest in it, and how to incentivize creation afterwards, which is, I guess, a challenge for a big corporate, for sure. So what changes and trends do you see in large corporations like Phillips?
So sorry, what?
What changes and trends do you see in large corporations in innovation, like what you see in Phillips?
Yeah, and I think a little bit what I said earlier. So we're working more agile, and we're really changing a lot of these activities as well. I think, one of the risks is that you work too long on your innovation. So we're looking at shorter cycles, giving an idea more oxygen, as we call it, at the beginning. I mean, a hackathon, of course, is an extremely short cycle.
Sure.
But sometimes you have to run an idea, and maybe sometimes we have like almost competing teams that work on ideas. That you say, if you look at them from as an outsider, because I have more kind of, I see the width of what's been worked on, and what may or may not come into the lab. So I'm not a program manager or anything, but sometimes you see ideas, and then they seem to be the same kind of or address the same principle, and to see from different angles, looking at an idea, and just have a short cycled exploration, that can also be very beneficial.
Yeah, I think that the success of an idea starts with the idea itself, but what you do with it. What is the team who's working on it? How can you elaborate that and putting some flesh on it? That's the difference, because idea doesn't have much meaning before you do that. No. And it's hard to go from idea or a concept to something which is further, because you really need to validate it. You need to build a business case. You need to prove that it's a good idea to start with it, and then do it and then grow, which is a big challenge, because this means that the company decided to invest more money in it, and that's not easy.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about an interesting use case from Phillips?
Yes. But there's sometimes the innovation is purely technological, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's applying a new technology on an existing area. But there's one example that are MRI scanners, the big magnetic resonance scanners that are placed in hospitals. Once they're placed, they up until today they would run on helium, and so the hospital needed to build. They need to build a special room for these type of scanners, because it's a big magnet, so you need to kind of zone out and isolate everything around the scanner. But also they use helium in the procedure, and Phillips has managed. So for this helium, a hospital needed to build air vents and big pipes, and it was the investment to prep the room was even more expensive than the equipment itself. So then Philips developed a helium, free or almost free MRI scanner, and that of course is a fantastic new development, because then it allows for more hospitals to use MRI scanners without the whole renovation aspect of it. So that's a fantastic example, I think. Another one is what we are doing in our oncology innovation. So around oncology, we see a lot of digitization of the process. So there is often a scan is made, often an MRI scan, and that's already digital data. Now, from this data, if you in case of a cardiac patient, if you make a heart scan, you can also remodel this heart, and then you have a virtual heart, and it's not just an average virtual heart, but it's from this specific patient with this specific outlook, and then surgeons can use this model to prep their surgery with. So, for example, if they have to place a stent, they can kind of pre-try that, and then they need to know the width of the stent, the width of the vein, etc., how to reach it. So that is in terms of the surgery time, it's a massive reduction of that time. So that's then hits on the patient experience, and also of the cost of being in a cath lab, etc. So that's an interesting example.
It's like a VR. The doctor needs to place a VR in order to see the 3D model, or it's just a 3D view within an application.
Yeah, this is a 3D view, so this is pre-operative. But we're also working with HoloLenses in cath labs, so to see. So you have the interfacing of the equipment. That's quite a known example. But you can also then reapply this virtual model on the outlook of the patient, and then of course also your surgery will become much easier.
Right. I think that in general, just to think about this total experience of something which is a bit like technical, because you need to fix the heart, but you have the surgeons and which needs to really do it, and you have the nurses and the staff, and you have the patient itself. So there are many aspects of this experience from different views, and you need to take into account all of that, as you said, which is it's what you're doing. I talked to the head of the World Food Program from the UN two episodes ago, and I felt like some people, they have the luck to do something which is substantial and important. So thinking just making people's lives much easier if they have an MRI next to their house and don't need to drive so far, because it's not as expensive, and more hospitals could have this gear, which is an important aspect. And the fact that in many cases, when you think about going to a hospital, it's the experience, you're stressed because you need to be there at first. But after that, the equipment is so stressing, because you see all the beeps and all the sounds, and it's all made to take care of you from the medical staff point of view. And I think it's so important for someone just to look at it from other points of view. And this is what UX Lab could do in order to make their lives a bit less stressful, I would say. I wouldn't say better, but less stressful. So what is the most surprising thing you learned about innovation from so many years of experience?
Ooh, that's a good question. Sometimes you have the, I think this was one of the first hackathons that I organized. and we had it was for respiratory, and so what happened there was that there's respiratory is a serious equipment, but in the case of sleep and snoring. Snoring is and this was in 2015, so now it's already well on the market. But so in this hackathon, there was one team, and they were focusing on snoring, and they said, well, what if we, we can do audio detection. So from the audio, we can already detect a lot of data. So also if people have sleep apnea, they stop with breathing for like maybe a number of seconds, and when that happens, they that's it. I mean, that's in audio, easily detected. It's very bad for people. That's why they need to have the CPAP masks, etc. But so in this case, and they said, well, hey, what if we just take our phone and we place it on the bedstand and we record this snoring? And that was something, it seemed like a good idea. And there was some puzzling about the business case around it. But actually that end result, that led to starting up a whole new consumer sleep business. So so a few years later, that business came back to us and said, "Oh, that was such a success. Can you please repeat that?" So that was kind of one of the most significant innovations that was part of my small world here.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's a good story, because in most cases when you see, especially if you're a medical institute or like all the people there are very dedicated to do things which is scientific and very to the details. Sometimes things that are a bit different, just to view it from a different point of view, it gives you so much advantage over what you were usually doing. And what you said about being creative, it could only be in this like atmosphere of thinking differently, of thinking something like, maybe we could do that, maybe we could test something that we didn't think about it before. And now you see, like 5 years later, it's like you can use it like so easily, and it's so important. And other than the fact that you're snoring and your spouse might not like it, it's your health, because if you don't sleep well, so it influences all your daily life and activities. So sure. So we're almost done. The last thing I want to ask you is your number one tip for innovation leaders.
Stay open. So I think the example that I said that often, sometimes here we say like, oh, that idea, like we've tried that. Good ideas never get lost. That's, I think, one of the things that we learn. And so sometimes the timing is not right, but then it will kind of reoccur. So I think that's my tip. It's not maybe a big tip, but good ideas never get lost. So if something is there, and I think to have kind of a database and of your ideation, because we have many workshops and we have the hackathons, and there's so many ideas. So sometimes you get like an idea fatigue almost. But now what we do is we store it in a database, and then we can reuse it. So
do you place them on matrices, which is more feasible, which is more like important, which is more like for your goals as a company? Do you scale these ideas, or are they just sitting there?
Yeah, sometimes. I think that's what you do if you start new ideation, and then you can first have this kind of make pre-selection, and then start to map them and look at the relevancy and look at the feasibility aspects of them. So that can work.
Yeah, so it's really interesting to think how these ideas could go from within the companies. Many companies think that they don't have it, so they take it from the outside, maybe collaborate with the startups or purchase the startups and merge and so forth. And I think it's so important that you could have this DNA within your company and it grows you much more than taking it from the outside, and sometimes it's less expensive even. So it really makes sense for companies to do it from within. And sometimes they don't have the expertise like Phillips had, like so many years of innovating. And they could just do it step by step, as you said. Like in the beginning, you did a few like 2-day hackathons, and then it grew, and then it's like a status quo that you're doing that. And in the beginning, it wasn't there.
Yeah.
And it can.
Yeah. So we also work with startups. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of collaboration, and I think that's also the beauty. So but it's kind of you need to be able to recognize the good idea and to recognize. So we have quite a large portfolio also. So where does it fit? And sometimes you see a great idea, but then it doesn't fit our portfolio. Then it's not for us. But then you can be confident that somebody else will pick it up.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to thank you for your time. It's been so interesting for me, and I hope for others. If somebody has a question for you, wants to contact you, what is the best place for doing that?
I think via LinkedIn. That's LinkedIn. Possible, right? Or via you, if nothing else works.
Sure. I'd be happy to. So if you have any questions or you want to ask further, you just feel free. I want to thank you, Mirjam, for your time. It's been such a pleasure.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And to all of you change makers out there, thank you for joining me. We'll meet next week in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.